How's it going? So the other week I showed you a little bit of behind the scenes of how I shot a cinematic video, and today I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the process of editing this. So first, I jumped onto Adobe Premiere Pro. There's a lot of different editing programs you can use, like DaVinci Resolve, but Premiere Pro is just the one I've got the most experience with. So I started by importing my footage. So I just created some different folders or bins, as it's called in Premiere. I just named them and grouped them depending on what camera I had shot. So made a bin for Fujifilm, made a bin for Osmo, for Maverick, so on. Also, just a little tip, make sure to sort your footage by name, because by default Premiere just kind of chucks it in the most random order, but if you sort it by name it should actually list it in correct order. So for my sequence settings, it's just simple basic 4K resolution. I've set it to 30 frames per second just because all my cameras were filming at 60 frames per second, so it just makes it nice and smooth, cutting it in half to 30. So for assembling the clips for this shoot, I do know roughly the order that I want it, but I did shoot multiple versions of each clip, so I have to go through and see which one suits the best. So the first shots I went through was the drone shots, because that was the establishing shot, and there was a few different ones I could use, but I ended up going with one of the first ones I got, which was the drone going over the trees. And I pretty much did the same thing for all the other clips. Just went through, found the bits that looked the best and used them. So one of the trickiest shots to edit was this flyby shot, because it's actually two static shots, but I wanted it to look like the camera was following it. So what I did was I zoomed in and then I animated the position to follow the car in post. I also added some directional blur as the car sort of got closer to the end of the shot, just to make it look like the camera was moving quicker as well. So I took a still frame from the end of the first clip and a still frame from the start of the second clip, and then took them into Photoshop and adjusted their position. And then I just used generative fill in the middle to sort of fill it in and create a bit of a smear frame similar to what you'd use in animation. I then took that back into Premiere Pro and put it in between the two clips, and I only set its duration for 1 frame, so you can't even really notice it, but it just helps smooth that transition between the two shots and really helps sell that effect that I was going for. The final effect I applied to this shot was I added some camera shake. I did this simply by adding a transform modifier, and I adjusted the shutter angle to something high, like I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was either 180 or 360, and that just gives it blur when you adjust the positioning. And then so I just manually put keyframes to animate camera moving in a realistic shaking way as the car went past, and it calculates the blur for that automatically. And with all those different effects combined, it created this final result. So I also use the same motion blur trick for a lot of the other shots, like the shot of the tachometer, and it just really helps sell that effect of intensity and speed. So unfortunately, I don't actually have any proper microphones, so I had to get a little bit creative. So what I did is I created a folder with all different sound clips that I already had of my car. So I had some shots that some friends had filmed in my car when I'd taken them for drives, so I used those different clips. And one other thing I did as a bit of a cheat to get a lot of the sound effects was I jumped into Need for Speed Unbound and just created a very similar BRZ to what I have in real life. So put a supercharger on it and some things like that. One other thing that came in really handy was in Need for Speed Unbound, I found this little tunnel, and you can turn your car off and then start it up. And it gave it that really good echoing sound that I wanted for the very start of my video when the car turns on. So once I had all these sound clips, I just layered them into the video. A lot of the time I'd have the Need for Speed Unbound sound effect as sort of the main sound. It was a little bit flat, it didn't have the same rumble and rasp that the car has in real life. So that's where I'd put some of the other sound clips that I had. But for the interior shots, like the shot of the tachometer, I was just able to use some of the interior clips I already had. So the final thing to do for this video was the color grading. Now I will just say I'm still learning color grading. I'm not super happy with where I'm at with it, but I'll just show you what I did anyways, just in case you do like how it looked or you just don't really have much of an idea of even where to start. So all my footage was shot in log. So on each camera it's got its own log format. So for Fujifilm it's F-log, and each individual DJI camera is slightly different as well. Once that was done, I created an adjustment layer, and then with this I just played around with the exposure and the contrast and shadows, as well as the curves. You can sort of pick and choose what colors you want to emphasize a bit more. So for me, I really wanted the oranges to be quite prominent, so I was able to boost them, and I wanted the blues as well, and then a lot of the other colors I tried to sort of take out for the most part, to really give it that sort of cinematic orange and teal look that's pretty classic. And then to add a little bit more depth to that as well, I created a box with a gradient in it. And the gradient went from like a dark blue to sort of a bright orangey yellow. And I just set the blending mode of this to overlay and positioned it in a way where it kind of looks like the sun, you can kind of control where the sun's coming from and where the shadows are. Once that was all done, I just felt like I needed to add some music at the end. So I just found some copyright-free music to chuck in, and I had a logo I'd already made as well a little while ago, so I put that in it as well. And yeah, that's it. So anyways, that's just a quick breakdown of my editing process for this video. If you want me to go in more depth on something specific, please let me know. I'm happy to do an individual video on each effect or whatever you guys are interested in. Also, if you are interested in how I shot the clips and you haven't seen that video, there'll be a link somewhere around that you can click on. It'll take you to that video to check out as well. And finally, if you're interested in any of the gear that I used, there will be links to them in the description as well. Anyways, that's it. Have a good one.